Hello and welcome back to Mark's NOTCAST. This is an irregular series, whenever I can be bothered, where I, a middle-aged man, talks about records that he loves, likes, or in some cases, as with one of the records I'm talking about tonight, merely owns that record. Bruce Dickinson's risible debut solo record, Tattooed Millionaire. But before we get much further, it is the 8th of March. And I'm just going to give you a very quick update on a couple of things. You may have seen a couple of episodes ago, I announced that I've signed a book contract. I am hard at work at that at the moment. I'm on about 66,000 words. And when I'm not at work, I'm typing away at great speed, putting it all together. It does mean that my brain is very tired sometimes, and that can only be alleviated by a sudden injection of cats or crisps or anything along those lines. Aside from that, things are moving in the rest of my life. As I've mentioned, there are 3 big things that I'm working on. One is coming to a close, one is still halfway through, and the book is still occupying. I haven't had a dream about it yet, but a fair chunk of my mental headspace, I think it's fair to say. So with all that to one side, it's been about a week and a half since I've done one of these, primarily because I've been spending the time brain dumping furiously all the amount of information I've got in my head about the certain thing that I'm writing about, which I will announce when I can announce it. But I think some of you will be quite pleased and you won't be disappointed. Today I am talking about, I wouldn't even call it one of my favourite bands because they're not objectively particularly good, but a band that I love unashamedly, the rock and roll pantomime that is the Britain's equivalent to the metal Beatles. It is Iron Maiden and their 8th studio record, the worst record they'd made at that point in their career, No Prayer for the Dying. And I'd like to quickly introduce you to, if he'll let me do it, no he won't, he'll walk off, a little cat called Tinker who's about 2 years old, who just walked in to check and make sure I was up to. He's always walking around, he's always under my feet, he's normally wherever I want to be, he's normally standing there looking at me quizzically with yellow eyes going, "What are you doing that for?" That's how cats look at everything, really, isn't it? They look at it and go, "You're an idiot, I could do that better than you," which is, just part of life with a cat, really, isn't it? So, before we get to the Iron Maiden album, I'm going to talk about Iron Maiden in 1990 and Bruce Dickinson and where the band were. And primarily, I think, and it's important to think about late 1988, as Iron Maiden careened off the road at the end of a seventh tour. They took a long break. Steve Harris edited the Maiden England sell-through VHS and then released it. And then other things happened. Adrian Smith, then the band's guitarist, released his debut solo record called Silver and Gold by a band called Adrian Smith and Project, ASAP, which could stand for as shit as possible, but probably isn't. I think we should be very wary of any band that calls itself a project, because if it's a project, primarily you're making it because you're kind of bored and you sat around going, well, I'm not on tour and I like being in a band and the other guys in the band don't like touring, so I'm going to write some songs and they're not going to be very good. They're not going to be good enough for the proper band I'm in, the reason people like me. But I'm going to make those and I'm going to release those and then use it as an excuse to go on tour. At least that's how it feels. And having heard Silver and Gold once in 1989, I can confidently say it is a record that I've heard and that I have no desire to ever hear it ever again, nor any desire to listen to any of the many solo records which Adrian Smith has released, either under the names of Psycho Motel, Billy Smart Circus, or whatever they're called, the current version, which is Smith and Kotzen. I just kind of go, no, not interested, doesn't work for me. And that also applies to the solo album by Bruce Dickinson, the first solo album by an Iron Maiden vocalist whilst he was still in the band. Tattooed Millionaire is what it's called, and it came out in 1990, and it not only is it one of the worst records I've ever heard, it's also one of the worst records I ever own, and I'm going to explain why. Primarily because Tattooed Millionaire, there is no reason for it to exist at all, absolutely none, apart from the fact that somebody offered Bruce an enormous amount of money to write a record. And it started with he was commissioned or asked to write a song for the soundtrack to Nightmare on Elm Street 5, and I can confirm that the song is better than the film. Bruce, who hadn't seen any of the Nightmare on Elm Street films, didn't know anything about how they worked, kind of got someone to explain, tell me what this film's about. It's a man and then kills people and he goes into their dreams, and okay, great. And then he rang up a guy called Yannick Gers. Yannick, he'd played with on stage at Wembley Arena, I think, in 1987, I believe. And Yannick did some guitar for Fish from Marillion's solo record. I was just about to pack it all in after having spent some time in various bands, I think working with Ian Gillan and Rainbow and other kinds of bands, and it's just like, well, I'm going to go and get a proper job. I was just about to sell his guitars and all that type of stuff, and Bruce rang him up and went, don't sell your guitars, write a song with me. And the song they wrote was called Bring Your Daughter to the Slaughter, a song that was so good, and easily, by the way, the best Bruce Dickinson solo track ever. Apart from maybe The Killing Floor, actually, which is really very good. And said, here it is, it's great. And then they listened to it and went, that's great, have you got an album? And Bruce was like, yeah. He hadn't got an album. Newsflash, kids, no album. Was sent a check for loads of money, wrote the album very, very quickly. Now, how much of Tattooed Millionaire is taken from songs that Bruce had originally written for 1986 is Somewhere in Time, hadn't used and just parked in a corner, I don't actually know. It was written, the whole album was written in about 2 weeks, and I've got to tell you, it shows basically a song a day, someone going, every day, today you're going to write a song, and it's going to be about something, I don't care what it is, but you're going to write a song, and at the end of those 2 weeks you're going to have an album, and one of the songs is going to be called well, it isn't going to be called Bring Your Daughter to the Slaughter, because it's not on this record. It's on the next Iron Maiden album, No Prayer for the Dying. Like a lot of Bruce's work, and Bruce is quite open about this in his autobiography, What Does This Button Do? It's impersonal. I mean, listening to the lyrics on this, there is no element of it that tells you that Bruce Dickinson is in any way an actual human being with thoughts or feelings or hopes or dreams or aspirations. There's nothing personal, pardon me, in this album at all, apart from possibly the title of Born in 58. It's even less personal than normal. The songwriting is very, very basic. And in fact, if anything, and reason I bought it is largely because, well, I feel like I should do, and that's not a good reason to buy a record, is it? So you're looking in the CD booklet, of course I haven't got the vinyl because it's not good enough to buy on vinyl, by the way, and you kind of go, oh, that's Yannick Gers. Who's Yannick Gers? Well, he's the guitarist, but also he's just about to join Iron Maiden because things are happening there, and he was brought on because he wrote a song for Fish, and I think Bruce got on with him well as a person, liked the stuff he did with Fish, and thought he could make it happen. But effectively, this album is awful. There is no reason for this record to exist. It is basically work for hire, and some of the lyrics are truly, truly abominable, and I'll get to those in a minute. But you know, the tracks on here, there's Son of a Gun, Tattooed Millionaire, and Son of a Gun is like epic. It's almost Maiden, but it's a Maiden like sub Maiden like album track. So at the moment, in Depeche Mode, they have a deal, and the deal is Martin writes about 3/4 of the album, and Dave Garn writes about a third to a quarter of the album, depending on how good it is. And the solo albums by Dave Garn are the songs that the rest of Depeche Mode went, not really good enough to be a Depeche Mode song, is it? That is basically what Tattooed Millionaire is. It's Iron Maiden rejects. In some respects, it is songs written by a new writing partnership of Bruce Dickinson and Yannick Gers, trying to be like Iron Maiden, but clearly not trying to be like Iron Maiden as well, and presumably recycling some of the songs from the songs written for Somewhere in Time that never got used. Son of a Gun is okay. Tattooed Millionaire it's a basic rock. And it's very, very basic indeed. Born in 58, thoroughly average. Hot Wheels, not Hell on Wheels actually. Shows how often I listen to it. Hell on Wheels is basically a rewrite of Back in Black, because everybody loves a bit of AC/DC, and I think Bruce covered AC/DC Sin City on the subsequent tour. Gypsy Road, what is that all about? I don't know. What else have we got? Dive, Dive, Dive. Oh my God, this is probably the worst song I have in my record collection, apart from Pet Shop Boys, The Sound of the Atom Splitting. Dive, Dive, Dive is juvenile, appalling, girls kind of rubbish. You know, it's got lyrics about semen stains, Captain Pugwash, no muff too tough, and I'm like, oh my God, man. Now, when I heard this, by the way, the first time I heard this, I think I was 15. I'd never had sex. I'd never had a relationship. I'd barely spoken to a girl in my life. And even then, me as a 15-year-old knew this was like knuckle-draggingly stupid lyrics. It really, really was. Maybe we should get someone that does the voice for the intro to The Number of the Beast to read this out and intone the lyrics to Dive, Dive, Dive for you. But oh my word, it's like, turn your stern and cover me. We're rolling swell for a seaman dog like me. Seaman stains is down below. Torpedoes loaded, ready to go. Wait for discharge, waiting for release. As she rounded up the horn, we came up from below. Oh my God, how old are you? Seriously. So, if born in 58 is correct, these lyrics were written by someone who was 31. Even I, at the age of 13, would have known that that was an embarrassing and stupid lyric. It's basically like Motley Crue's Girls, 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 twinned with some version of Das Boot or a World War II war film. And it's just atrociously bad. It's just like embarrassing as an adult to go, I've got a record with that in it. Maybe I should throw it away. Maybe not. But it's awful. Yeah, it's just, the whole album is basically songs that weren't good enough to be Iron Maiden B-sides that somehow he fudged an LP out of. There's a cover version of All the Young Dudes, the song, the far superior song written by David Bowie. There is Licking the Gun, what's that about? There's Zulu Lulu, oh my word, that is atrocious too. And again, Zulu Lulu has some terrible, terrible lyrics. She dropped to her knees. I guess she had religion. She lived with her mother. Had been a good girl twice. When I asked her to comment on her present position, she said, I like to take a lay preacher's advice. Oh my word. This is just atrocious. And as far as I can work out, it's something to do with being, excited by taking a woman who's not British to bed. Oh my word, Bruce. Grow up. Obviously there's a reason why it doesn't sing any of the songs from it now. Or as I put in my notes here, ooh, a bit dodgy, which is correct. And then there's No Lies, which is not very good either. The whole thing is forgettable drivel. It's got the mental age of about 7, and it's just awful. Don't buy this. Okay, unless it's like 50p and you really want to go, is it as bad as I think? The answer is, oh my word, you cannot be prepared for the horrors that are Tattooed Millionaire. Not even by listening to Metallica and Lou Reed's Lulu can you get close to the perfect object of derision that is Tattooed Millionaire. And there were singles. I think Tattooed Millionaire was one of them. Dive, Dive, Dive was one of them. There were some B-sides. The Ballad of Mutt, a song written about a dog, for example. Wind of Change. Live versions of AC/DC, Sin City, Riding with Angels, and I think Rainbow, or is it Deep Purple's Black Knight. So would solo Bruce be any good? Well, certainly at this point, no. It's an ego trip. It's done for money. There is no reason for this record to exist. Not artistically, not commercially. It's basically a bored bloke sitting at home going, well, they've offered me a load of money to make a record, so I'll make it. And that's not a good enough reason to put anything out. When he came back off the tour, or more correctly, Bruce did a solo tour which is captured on a DVD called, unsurprisingly, Live, Live, Live. It's on the Bruce Dickinson DVD anthology, which is about there on my shelf behind me. I haven't yet watched it because I have no interest in it, realistically. There were some conversations in Iron Maiden about what would happen next. Adrian had got his solo project. as shit as possible. Sorry, Adrian Smith and Project out. And there was then the absolutely awful experience that was Iron Maiden as they were in 1990. Adrian left the band and Yannick joined, and it was very, very quickly. Yannick, very different from Adrian, very heavily into the Beatles, and then into glam, folk, Led Zeppelin, etc. He was in Gillian's solo band, but Gillian didn't want to do the big rock stuff, and Yannick definitely did. Gillian was like, I've been there, done that, don't need to do it. He joined Paul Di'Anno, of all people, in a band called Gog Magog. When Gog Magog, by the way, also featured, I think, was it Dennis Stratton, I think? Possibly, I think, Simon Wright, or maybe Clive Burr or somebody. Anyway, Gog Magog were put together by now disgraced sex offender Jonathan King to form another rock band, Got Nowhere. And Gog Magog, by the way, is the name of the two beasts that stand at the gates of hell, should you die and be sent there. Not a great band, it's fair to say. But yeah, Yannick was offered the job. His first rehearsal was The Trooper, Iron Maiden, and The Prisoner. And he was on board very, very quickly. I just thought, yeah, he's the man for us. Join the band. And, you know, that was how it went. And then the band went into the studio the next day and started recording what would become their 8th studio album, No Prayer for the Dying. And this is by no means a good album, by the way. In fact, it's my least favourite Maiden album at that point. And if I remember correctly, these are the original covers for the album. The cover was changed in about 1998. I'm not quite sure why, but it was. Let me just quickly check. Yeah, I think this is the original one. Don't know why the cover was changed. Don't particularly care. But this means actually this is the only Iron Maiden album that's got 3 official covers, because there's this version, the 1998 version, and the picture disc version of the album, which has the cover taken from the unreleased Tail Gunner single, by the way. And Tail Gunner in itself is, well, that's a song, isn't it? And it's the first song on the album. So the idea for No Prayer for the Dying was a little different from previous Maiden albums. The idea was to take a step back, to move away from Seventh Son of a Seventh Son, and to do something that was a bit back to basics, to get rid of the synths, to go something for a bit dirtier, a bit more basic, a bit more AC/DC, and a little less kind of proggy. But the problem was the tide was turning against old school rock overall. And by that, you know, we hadn't yet got Nirvana, but Iron Maiden were very definitely now in the old school of metal and rock. They were an old band. And as Steve said, it didn't quite come off. What they wanted to do was to do a replica of a live performance and put their live energy onto a record. But it didn't work, because the live show had been scaled down for the No Prayer for On the Road tour. And there was less of the giant icebergs, less of the proggy stuff. Iron Maiden became the most ordinary they'd been since about 1980. And you think about the bands that were going on around at the time, 1989, 1991, and there was a big rise of the big four. So Slayer, Metallica, Megadeth, Anthrax, Guns N' Roses, that type of thing. American rock was big. British rock, not so big. Not doing such a great job of things at all. And that showed, because this was the first album where, although the band said, oh, we want to get back to the basics, that had been forced upon them, actually. They kind of knew the wind was changing, and they had to change with it. And they had a thing where they had effectively what's called the papal fallacy. And again, Bruce writes about this in his book, What Does This Button Do? He talks about the papal fallacy being, why is the Pope always right? Because he is the Pope and he can never be wrong. And that was an interesting thing, is effectively you had success bias and you had almost like success fallacy. The idea that you can't make a mistake because everything you've done up to this point has been right. That's something which, by the way, also affects certain other singers. I think Morrissey, kind of has a little bit of that fallacy. Is going, well, of course everything I do is genius, because I'm a genius, and therefore every decision I make is right, and every time it doesn't quite work, it's because of sabotage and jealousy by other people. as opposed to not having anyone that bounces an idea back to them and says, are you sure you want to do this? That was where Maiden were, is they'd had that success fallacy, I think, that was around them. And Iron Maiden couldn't break out from where they were without changing their sound. And they had to change their sound, but they still had to be Iron Maiden. And was Adrian right when he said that he wanted to do something different, that he wanted to change the band, that he wanted to be more melodic around things? Well, on the basis of Adrian's solo records, probably not. But nonetheless, there was still that issue where it was Maiden, but it was not so good. The songwriting was weaker on No Prayer for the Dying. The riffs weren't as good. The arrangements weren't as tight. It just wasn't as good an Iron Maiden album as anything they'd previously released. And it was the first album to be recorded in the UK, in a Rolling Stone Mobile in Steve's barn. Well, certainly the first one to be recorded since The Number of the Beast. And Steve didn't have a solo LP, so he had the songs. Bruce had already done the songs on the solo LP, so Bruce brought, actually, although there are, I think, 7 Dickinson co-writes on this, and this is the year where I think he released the most songs in his career. It was also the sense of Dickinson wasn't bringing his A game, because he'd written all those songs for the solo album, and some of the songs on the solo album were there. And the idea was to do an album, do it low-key, do it live in the studio, but the album just didn't work. So it sold 500,000 in the US, by the way, when it was released on the 1st of October 1990. That is less than the 1-point-something million that Seventh Son of a Seventh Son sold, which I think was 1.2 million. And those sales were much lower than previously. It got to number 2 in the UK, but there was a sense of Maiden being, for the first time, having been lapped by somebody else. And that was, not a particularly pleasant place to be, even though, of course, they still had fans that bought everything the first week it came out. Hence the first single from the album, Holy Smoke, did very well. They still got the HMV price sticker on it for £3.29, and contains an exclusive, massive 60-inch by 40-inch Holy Smoke commemorative poster. Unsurprisingly, that poster got blue tacked to a wall, so my copy does not now have it. It's backed with cover versions of All in the Mind, which is I think by I can't remember the name of the band now. I think they're called Stray from 1970, and Kill Me Ce Soir, which is by Golden Earring. And if there's one thing you got to say about Maiden is their cover versions are very obvious, aren't they? They're like Oasis in terms of covering the most obvious bands ever. The second single released from the album, and I'll get to that in a minute, but it's called Bring Your Daughter to the Slaughter. Yes, the song from the Nightmare on Elm Street soundtrack has become an Iron Maiden track. It's backed with I'm a Mover, I think, which is either by Free or Bad Company, and Communication Breakdown by a little-known band you've not heard of called Led Zeppelin. These are pretty obvious choices for the band. And I've got to say, it all reflects in so much as this is the least satisfactory Maiden LP that I think that they've ever released. Actually, is probably my least favourite Maiden LP ever, and that might be reflected in my Swarm scale that I get to shortly. But let's go to the first single released from the album, Holy Smoke, which is, I think, a Stephen Bruce co-write. There it is, Harris Dickinson. I listened to the guys on the Iron Maiden Pub Quiz podcast, which, by the way, is a very, very good podcast, where they came up with the idea that no matter what happens, Steve goes, I'm going to make it a little bit more Maiden, and just then gets a co-write. So how good it is, I don't know. So it's inspired by the hypocrisy of TV preachers, which, by the way, very clearly indicated in Bruce's introductions to the song on the live recordings. I have the FM broadcast of the Wembley Arena 1990 show, which I listened to yesterday, and he introduces this as being around TV preachers that sit in your television and they preach hatred and division and all things that are basically unchristian, and it's particularly influenced by Jimmy Swaggart, who did the If You Like Pop, Believe Yourself, did the speech about what is the truth about rock music. The idea of creating a moral panic about saying, well, it's not that so for example, blaming things on violent films, violent video games, rude words in records, as opposed to going, sometimes people just like, violence and swearing. And certainly, if you look at the post, the offstage careers of some of these people, there certainly seems to be a fair amount of sexual deviancy, infidelity, cheating, hypocrisy, diversion of public money, etc., etc. I'm kind of going, are you just acting, pretending to believe this stuff? Because that's almost worse than not even believing at all. And of course, it's not a subtle track at all. It says you are watching pay-to-play TV on here. So, Iron Maiden are not, necessarily fighting for the underdog here. They're taking aim at some pretty obvious things. So it was inspired by Jimmy Swaggart book, Music, the New Pornography, which has Steve Harris on the cover, by the way. And, reading that and then going, So talking about Jimmy Reptile and all his friends say they're going to be with you at the end. Burning records, burning books, holy soldiers, Nazi looks. Well, pretty obvious, isn't it? And now Iron Maiden are not a vastly political band, and unless you take the track These Colours Don't Run. They're pretty obviously, at least in terms of their iconography, quite right-wing in certain ways. They've got some quite traditional views. That certainly is also shown in the track Age of Innocence from Dance of Death. But at the same point, you kind of go, they're not obvious about politics in their records at all. You can work them out, but they're not obviously political. But this is clearly, a song that's the same as taking a few rungs out of hypocritical TV preachers. Is Holy Smoke any good? Well, it's all right, but it's not great. It's kind of like, and I'm trying to think about what the comparison would be. The band knew they were going to get a certain amount of sales. They knew they were going to get a certain amount of profile around that. They knew they were able to play certain types of venues. Hence, they did the Intercity tour, which by the looks of it was something like 30 shows in, smallish by their standards, arenas or theatres, somewhere between 2,000 and 5,000 people before heading off to 6 arena dates. So obviously playing to something like 100,000 people over those shows, possibly nearer 150,000. So they knew they were going to sell a certain amount of tickets, and so there's a degree of going, we're locked in, we know people are going to buy this record, so we can kind of do sort of what we want. We don't have to release the most obviously commercial track as the first one, and they didn't, because the most commercial track from the album, by the way, is going to be the second single, but it's already been out on the Nightmare on Elm Street 5 soundtrack. Oops. So Holy Smoke out of the way. This was the first time where, for me at least, looking at it from the outside, I thought, I don't like this band as much as I used to. As far as I'm concerned, everything the band had done up to Seventh Son of a Seventh Son was an upward trajectory. They were getting better and better and better and better. And then, with No Prayer for the Dying, they took a massive dip. In fact, this album, not only is it my least favourite Iron Maiden album, it is also the biggest individual drop-off in quality between albums that I have out of everything in my collection. So the next album, for example, is such an enormous disappointment that it made me think, maybe an Iron Maiden isn't for life. Maybe an Iron Maiden is just for puberty. So, with that in mind, what do I think of the record? Well, I think criticism comes from a place of love and being able to see the weaknesses in certain things as much as being able to see the strengths of certain things. And that means sometimes you have to be pretty tough and you have to be harder on a band that you like than you would a band that you don't like. So take, for example, the Red Hot Chili Peppers, one of the worst bands in the world, in my opinion. I will arm wrestle you and lose if you want to debate it with me, but I can prove it. They're terrible. However, Red Hot Chili Peppers, I know right from the off going in, they're going to be awful. They're always going to be awful, and they're never going to be good. The only thing that makes them even worse is the number of moustaches you've got on stage and exactly how many notes per second Flea can play. Instead of going, because remember, Mark Hollis from Talk had the view that you should only play one note if absolutely necessary, and even then, if you can get rid of the note, you should do it. Flea's view is it's like, go, dude, slow down, okay? Take some Quaaludes or something. Slow the fuck down. Nobody wants you to play that fast. It's like Yngwie Malmsteen and his Guitar Institute of Technology nonsense. Nobody needs to play that fast, okay? I know I talk fast. It's because I have ideas that are coming out of my head. And I'm not a bass player. Thank God. Well, apparently they do it with rhythm. I don't know if that's true. Technically, they're the strummers. Anyway, No Prayer for the Dying. Is it a good album? No. Does it have good songs on? 3, 4, maybe. Is it a good Iron Maiden album? No. Is it a good album? No. Why am I talking about it? Not sure. Here we are. I mean, I could just pass it over and go, no, it's awful, and just watch the next one, whatever that's going to be about. But no, let's go in and let's go why. So Tail Gunner's quite good. In fact, Tail Gunner's probably my favourite track on the album. It's the opening track from the album. Clearly, given the cover art, it was intended at one point potentially to be a single. But it wasn't, and I don't have the cover art to hand because I think the cover art to Tail Gunner, it was on I think it was on one of the 7 inches of Bring Your Daughter to the Slaughter. God knows why. It was also, I think, on the Art for the No Prayer for the Dying tour book, which, by the way, I have here. And if I can find it, I will show it to you. But it might not have been done yet. No, it hasn't. Typical. Oh well. And by the way, I do have the No Prayer for the Dying tour book because it was £1 in a charity shop. I didn't go and see Iron Maiden on this tour. So, No Prayer for the Dying opens with Tail Gunner, Steve and Bruce co-writes. And it's probably the best song on the album. If I was writing an imaginary dream Iron Maiden set list, Tail Gunner would be the only song from No Prayer for the Dying that would get within 1,000 miles of being played, by the way. And quite rightly so. It is about the bombing of Dresden in the 13th to 14th of February 1945. Happy Valentine's Day, Nazis. And it's about the differences in war and combat over time, probably inspired by more modern wars. And we're seeing this now, which, by the way, when I talk about the war that's going on at the moment, you're quite within your rights to go, well, which one exactly? Is it the war in Ukraine? Is it the war in Gaza? Is it the war in Iran and Dubai that's making all the influences suddenly rethink their life choices? Or is there another war that's going on that's about to happen that we don't know? There are too many wars going on. But one of the things we're seeing in all of the wars is basically it's war by drone. So people aren't fighting wars, those lovely laser-guided bombs that are really great at righting wrongs are doing the work. And, instead of killing people and seeing them up close and all that type of stuff, the murder that takes place during the war is generally someone pressing a button and seeing something on a screen fall over or explode or turn into a pile of dust. It's not the same. And that's where Tail Gunner kind of takes its idea from, is modern warfare, certainly modern aerial combat. In the 80s, having seen Top Gun, which, as we all know, is a fantastic documentary about being in the American Air Force in 1986, and everybody looks like Val Kilmer or Tom Cruise, is one of those things where you press a button and the missile goes on and goes poof, blows people up. Tail Gunner is about something very, very different. It's about being effectively the guy that sits at the back of a bomber as he's flying over a foreign country, having artillery thrown at him to shoot off, basically, enemy airplanes that are trying to shoot you out of the sky. No pressure. And how the war has changed over time from remote combat and manual combat, and the justification of evil, or the justification of evil versus good in a war is automatic, because it's my guys, they're good, and because it's your guys, they're bad, and that kind of very binary, polar kind of thing. Whereas, obviously, and there's lots of great songs that are written about war, by the way. This is not one of them. Nothing on here compares to anything on Pink Floyd's The Final Cut, of course. And even that doesn't have some of the best songs ever written about war in it. But Tail Gunner is a great song. It's not a great song about war. It's a great Iron Maiden song. However, I have to take issue with it because it has the line in there, and I'm going to quote it exactly for you from here. Nail that fucker, kill that son, going to blow your guts out with my gun. Right, so the Fokker did not fight in World War II unless it was run by the Dutch Air Force. Had a very limited number of Fokkers in the air. Now, this is almost important. It isn't important, but it is almost important. The word Fokker is clearly there, so they could put this on the back of a T-shirt, and you could go, it looks like a rude word. Oh, my God. Yeah, really. Okay. And you know, these guys, like, are old enough to know better is probably the best way to describe it. Tail Gun is a great song, but of course it's historically inaccurate. The Fokker was largely flown by the Germans in World War One, not World War Two. But who's going to sit down and compare history books? Despite the webpage, it says everything I learnt about history I learned from Iron Maiden. Track 2. Oh, it's Holy Smoke. We've talked about that, so we don't need to talk about that one anymore. We've already done that one. Track 3 is No Prayer for the Dying, and it is not linked to the Mickey Rourke film from 1987. It just stole the title from it. It's a very standard, very trad Iron Maiden song. Every Iron Maiden album has at least one chin stroker where you sit there and go, what is life? What's death? What does it really mean anyway? What's reality? That is No Prayer for the Dying on this album. And if you've got a song that is thoroughly unexceptional and you make it your title track, it's difficult then to go, oh, this is fantastic. So, for example, think of the Iron Maiden title tracks up to this point. Iron Maiden, Killers, The Number of the Beast, Power Slave, Caught Somewhere in Time, Seventh Son of a Seventh Son. All fucking bangers. Sorry to swear, but they are incredible songs. Fear of the Dark from the next album, also absolute banger, amazing. No Prayer for the Dying, not a banger. Just so that you know. And a banger is a technical term, by the way. It means something that's very, very good indeed. And it just passes, and like, you know, I've heard it 3 times in the past week and I can't remember a single thing about the song. So it can't be that good. Public Enemy #1 has possibly the worst Iron Maiden song title ever, apart from Charlotte the Harlot, and is again utterly forgettable. It's about political hypocrisy, it's about lying, it's about the thing in politics called the Judas goat. And if you don't know what a Judas goat is, I'm going to tell you. If you do know, skip forward about 2 minutes, you won't miss much, because it's time for Vlad the Explainer. A Judas goat is somebody who in politics will advocate and posit an idea that is worse for you and bad for you, but good for somebody else. And this is taken from in slaughterhouses. They have Judas goats that are trained to lead the other goats in the herd into the killing floor. Well, it ties in with the Bruce Dickinson song I mentioned earlier on. And the Judas goat is rewarded for that. So the goats, or sheep or bulls or whatever, will go into there and go, I don't really know what's going on. Is this safe? And then another one will go, oh, come with me. It's all right. It's fine. I've been here before. Follow me. It's fine. They'll lead them into the killing floor, and then the goat will walk ahead, and then they'll just shut the gate, and the rest of them will get killed. And then they'll reward the Judas goat with a little bit of money. Reminds me a lot of politicians that are doing things that are good for them, but bad for the people they claim to represent. And yeah, I could name some politicians that are doing that right now, both in Britain and America. But I won't, because I try not to do politics too much on this show. Politics is very divisive, and the news is awful and atrocious and upsetting, and I don't want to read it. I'll put it that way. So that's Public Enemy #1, which also has an awful title that takes the phrase Public Enemy and turns it into Public Enema. And I'm like, oh man, grow up. And then there's Fate's Warning, and I've forgotten Fate's Warning even exists. It's forgettable. It's about inevitability, insecurity, but it's like, I don't even know what it's about. And I've heard it 3 times this week, and I'm there going, I don't remember it. Just nothing about it at all is memorable. Fate's Warning, turn the LP over. Well, not turn the LP over, but Fate's Warning is on here. And then we've got The Assassin, and The Assassin is track 1 side 2, I believe, been a while since I've heard it on vinyl. I've been listening to this on my phone. So yeah, Assassin. I remember the chorus. It's better watch out now. But it's kind of like a song about a professional train killer, because of course the world is full of them. And if you watch John Wick, everyone is a trained assassin, and there are no actual humans or randoms or people that are civilians at all. Everyone is a trained assassin that lives to a special secret code of honour and dignity amongst thieves. It's inspired by an interview with the killer and about the psychology of that. About where he said, the power of killing someone is like the power of having a god. It's like talking about. I remember, I think it was in the Bruce book. I was talking about the power that comes with that. You have a sense in an air, like you're in a plane and you're taking off, or an orgasm, or a hint of something that's beyond, the very boring casual sitting in a chair on a Sunday night talking to your mobile phone to upload to YouTube kind of thing. The sense of, and sometimes I've had that sense that you're so far beyond what you normally experience that it's almost magical. And in The Assassin, that's about somebody that commits murders. And of course, without murders, there'd be no Netflix. So, yeah, but it's okay. It's memorable. But again, a lot of the lyrics are very primitive. They're not very nuanced. They're not very mature. There's not very much about the personal life. As far as I can tell, the band do have personal lives. But aside from some of the songs on X Factor, which, by the way, is an incredible album and one of my favourites. Spoiler alert, I'm going to be talking about that soon, and I'm going to love it to bits. That is just, it's okay. And then we follow up with Run Silent, Run Deep, which is based on a book of a film about a World War II submarine. Run Silent, Run Deep was written before Dive, 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 of course. So you get all the serious stuff out for the Iron Maiden album and all the smutty jokes about semen stains out for the solo album. And again, it's a Harris Dickinson co-write. But is it any good? Yeah, it's all right. It's okay. It's better than Dive, Dive, Dive. But then, going to work is better than Dive, Dive, Dive. So it doesn't really matter. And then we have Hooks in You. Hooks in You, track 8, is the only Adrian Smith co-write on the album, and I think it's a Smith and Dickinson song, but it's also the third of the Charlotte the Harlot trilogy. Oh, you're doing yourself no favours at all, guys. You've got a song called Charlotte the Harlot, you've got a song called 22 Acacia Avenue. They're both about prostitutes. And then you've got a third song called Hooks in You, which has a chorus of hooks in you, hooks in me, hooks on the ceiling for that well-hung feeling. Oh my word, no big deal, no big sin, strung up on the love, I got the hooks screwed in. Grow up, fellas. Anyway, Hooks in You is not the worst song on the album, absolutely not. And neither, by the way, is Bring Your Daughter to the Slaughter. Hooks in You, though, is inspired by Bruce Dickinson trying to buy a house, walking around and seeing a bunch of hooks in the ceiling in the sex dungeon part of the mansion. Who knew that was going to be an Iron Maiden song? Still, there you go. Bring Your Daughter to the Slaughter. The only #1 single Iron Maiden ever had. 9th track on the album. The sole Dickinson contribution, as in terms of the only song that he wrote on his own, I believe, and also, of course, from the solo years. Bring Your Daughter to the Slaughter was the band's #1 hit single. It came out the first week of January 1990. It was formatted to fuck, to put technically, with a 12-inch, a CD, two 7-inches, one an etch disc and one a picture disc. I think they had different B-sides on, and also, what else was going on? Yeah, basically, they knew that if they put a #1 out in a number of formats on the first week of the new year, which was the year when the least people bought singles, Iron Maiden would clean up and never stand a chance of getting to #1, which is exactly what they did with this record. And Bring Your Daughter to the Slaughter is thoroughly okay. It's not amazing, but it's all right. The cover art is probably better than the 12-inch, actually. You've got a little kind of tribute to Batman there. You've got a number of monsters from some of the other records. I think, and then you've got Oscar the Grouch, I believe, there, as well as Iron Maiden, plus Genghis Khan, Charlotte and the Harlots, 999 and the Inverted Morons, Ron Maiden and the Dixie Chickens. Yeah, indeed. Well, okay, that's thoroughly all right. And then there's these little silly monsters which appear in tiny corners of various other Iron Maiden records. Is it any good? I quite like Bring Your Daughter to the Slaughter. It's the least offensive idiot rock which I think there is around this period. Certainly compared to Dive, Dive, Dive. Bring Your Daughter to the Slaughter is like Bohemian Rhapsody. Or possibly, you know, Ingmar Bergen's The Seventh Seal. No. And then the last track on the album is Mother Russia. It's a song about the end of an empire, about when Maiden were touring in places like Bucharest and Romania and places like that. And by the way, Bucharest had a revolution in December 1989, I believe, when the people overthrew the dictator, Ceausescu, and he was executed on Christmas Day, I believe, and there was a violent revolution. That was the beginning of the end for the United Soviet Socialist Republic, the USSR, Mother Russia itself. And Mother Russia is okay. I mean, you listen to it, it's got some inverted kind of like chords and things that sound very definitely not Western scales. But is it good? No, it's okay. It's not amazing. And that was the attitude that lots of people had to the whole of the album. Is No Prayer for the Dying is, well, it's not very good, is it? It's okay. It's another Iron Maiden album. But it's not brilliant at all. It's people were buying it out of loyalty. They were saying Iron Maiden out of loyalty, but it was most definitely a perceived quality drop-off after this album, or more correctly, when this album came out, compared to Seventh Son of a Seventh Son. And Adrian leaving. Adrian had a huge melodic influence on the band. He wrote, you know, Wasted Years and a number of the other songs and co-wrote. And he had just a lovely turn of sound, which Maiden didn't have on the rest of the album. And it was the first album that was written before Yannick came in, but without Adrian's involvement apart from on Hooks in You. So the band went on tour and they did the No Prayer on the Road tour. Here is the tour booklet, which, as I said, I picked up for about £1 many years ago. And there's a, you know, oh look, there's some pictures of people, and there's a list of places that they played, which starts in Europe, in Barcelona at the Sports Palace, and then ends at Seattle, Washington Arena on March the 25th. And then they played some more shows in Europe and Southeast Asia. Here's an introduction by Nico, I believe. What-ho, Nico here. That is not a lie. Those are the first two sentences. Never let Nico let you down. Some photos of various people in the band. Yannick writing about what a pleasure and a privilege it is to play in the greatest and finest rock band in the world that isn't called Metallica. Photo of Bruce, photo of Steve, not taken from the cover. There's a photo fold out there. I think the band are playing the Trooper during this song, I reckon. Could be wrong, but I think they are. And you know, I don't quite know who would take that out and blue tack that to their wall. Thankfully, the person that owned this before me didn't. Photo of what looks like Yannick wearing a t-shirt or it's Dave for the Holy Smokers, who did a warm-up gig for the tour. There's Nico. Look at me, I can play drums. And photo of Yannick with his foot out. Yannick's always got his foot out. I believe it's statistically impossible for Yannick to stand still for more than about 30 seconds without putting his foot out somewhere. Lovely man, but yeah, needs to work on his stagecraft. There's Eddie and a bunch of other photos, and finally some other photos which again have switched. And there's Bruce looking thoroughly dishevelled. Have a word with yourself, man. A white cotton chainmail vest. My giddy aunt, what is going on wrong with you? Whilst on tour, something else happened. Bruce Dickinson wrote his second, quote, novel, unquote. It is the missionary position, the further adventures of Lord Iffy Boat Race. I haven't looked this up recently. I think it sells for a lot of money. The reason it sells for a lot of money is because it's absolutely awful and not many people bought it. I didn't buy it at the time it came out. I thought it was £8.99 too much. I'll put it that way. And I picked up a copy for about £1.50 a few years ago. I thought it can't be as bad as people make out. So I'm going to pick a random paragraph, and genuinely I don't know which paragraph this is. So I'm going to go for that page, and I'm going to go for this paragraph here. He looked around to see if there was any more coke lying around to cheer him up. Cocaine had been Casper's salvation and his rock in times of depression. It had been his succour when he needed to summon the bravado necessary for the hard sell. It had also sown the seeds of destruction. His early days as a Miami businessman were disastrous. He had neither the flair nor the tenacity to run a crocodile leather condom shop. He had been talked into it by a friend who ran a crocodile farm. Casper paid him a lot of money for the finished product, a lot of his own money, which he had unwisely borrowed from a bank, putting up everything he had as security. Of course, there were no crocodile condoms, nor was there a crocodile farm registered in his friend's name, and for that matter, his friend became somewhat difficult to locate as well. That is page 67. If I'd have planned this, I'd have gone for page 69, because Bill and Ted would want me to choose that number. And basically, the missionary position is a pile of public school claptrap and nonsense. It takes all the solo lyrics from Dive, Dive, Dive and writes them out over approximately 263 pages of absolutely scatological, class-obsessed, sex-obsessed juvenile garbage. The missionary position is atrocious. Don't pay any money for it. And the people that paid Bruce Dickinson to write it should be ashamed of themselves, because you think about, he sat there on tour, fueled up by caffeine, writing this nonsense on a tiny little laptop somewhere, and he comes out with that garbage. It's terrible. It's almost as terrible, in fact, as the first Lord Iffy boat race book, which I read a little bit of and went, oh, that's bad. That's not right. So, basically, you might be going, why do you like Iron Maiden, Mark? Well, let me put it this way. Not because of this album and not because of this period. And because of this album and this period, I'm going to refer you to my well-known and pre-established Swarm Scale, where I talk through the album and its respective scorings. Again, I score out of 1 to 6 on a number of areas. So, for example, sorcery and ghosts, war and history, armaments and violence, religion and misogyny. Now, this album scores quite well, primarily because it doesn't have Dive, Dive, Dive on it. It scores 101, which makes it one of the best scoring of the albums that there is, with an average of 10.1 score for each one of the 10 songs. In fact, the most offensive song on it is, and I'm going to guess, it is Bring Your Daughter to the Slaughter, which has a score of 24, because it scores fully on sorcery and ghosts, on armaments and violence, religion and misogyny, but nothing on war and history, because Iron Maiden songs are either about misogyny or war and history. You can't have ones about both, for example, or you can have sorcery and ghosts and war and history, but you can't. There's very few Iron Maiden songs that score a full 6 all across the board. The least offensive song, and I can't believe I'm about to say this, is Public Enemy #1. Maybe I should have changed that score on the grounds of the title alone. But you know, the songs on the album, they all score pretty well, actually. Kill Me Ce Soir has a huge amount of just general kind of murderousness about it, so that one didn't score particularly well. But on the Swarm Scale, that is the score that we have for the album, and well, it's not a pretty sight. So there you go. As you can see, this is a low-tech bit of work where I just kind of put the screen in front of the camera and go, there you go, you can read it yourself. Yeah, it's okay. Let me see, it's certainly, I think, the lowest scoring of the albums. I'm going to quickly check and see if it is, actually, if it's got the lowest per... Yeah, it's definitely lower than Fear of the Dark. I think Caught Somewhere in Time might be better, actually. Somewhere in Time scores 44 so far. I think all the other albums are pretty bad on the scoring. Although technically the Final Frontier scores 100. So actually it's only it's the third least offensive of the Iron Maiden albums. Fourth, actually, because Virtual 11 gets 48. So we have Somewhere in Time at 44, Virtual 11 at 48. I think we have, what was 100? Yeah, so we have Final Frontier at 100, and then we have No Prayer for the Dying at 101. So that is my run through Iron Maiden's No Prayer for the Dying and the associated period. If you've spent 56 minutes with me, which is longer than the album itself is, good work. Thank you for sticking about. Well done. The next one will be about a band that is less embarrassing and less juvenile, undoubtedly, than Iron Maiden. And I'm going to do the bit now where I kind of pause and stop, and I put this in so you can go, that's going to be the thumbnail that's going to appear on YouTube that no one's going to notice. See, there you go, 54 minutes, 41 seconds. And the next time I do one of these, it won't be about Iron Maiden, which is great news, isn't it? I think I know what it's going to be about, but I don't want to tell you in case I change my mind. So, in the meantime, have a good time all the time. Take care of yourselves and each other. Stay beautiful, beautiful ones. And I will see you all soon. Adios amigos. Yeah, that'll be that. See you soon. All right, bye.